In 1850's Five Points, New York, 7,000 people were crammed into a single city block. That's one human being per 15 square feet. For perspective, your standard prison cell today gives an inmate about 4 times that space. And unlike prison, Five Points came with no guaranteed meals, clean water, or protection from killers lurking in unlit hallways. So if these stories help you relax or whatever, hit like or subscribe. Also curious where everyone's at, comment your city and time. Reading through last video's comments and seeing Miami, Manchester and Melbourne all in there. The internet's weird, right? So we're going back to 1850's Five Points tonight. But hold on, get yourself comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows, grab that blanket. This one's worth settling in for. The stench hits you first. Your eyes aren't even open yet, but your nose is working overtime. It's a cocktail of horrors: human waste, rotting food, unwashed bodies, and something else. Something dead. Maybe a rat decomposing in the wall beside your head. That wall, by the way, is so thin you can hear the baby crying on the other side, the couple fighting beyond that, and someone coughing up what sounds like pieces of lung even further away. You're waking up in Five Points, New York, 1853, the most notorious slum in American history. And that sound you're hearing, that's not your imagination, it's the cockroaches scuttling across the floorboards inches from your face. Your bed is a pile of damp straw covered with a scrap of burlap that someone probably stole from the docks. The moisture in it isn't water. Better not to think about it. Unlike your plush mattress back home, this one comes with residents, lice and bed bugs that have been feasting on you all night, leaving constellation patterns of bites across your skin that itch like fire. Get up, someone grumbles, kicking at your feet. My spot now. That's how it works here. You don't own anything, not even the space you sleep in. This tenement room, barely 10 feet by 12, sleeps in shifts. Night workers are coming back, which means day workers, that's you now, need to clear out. You sit up and count the bodies. 15 people crammed into a space that would be tight for 4. Men, women, children, all piled together. Some are family, most are strangers. 3 generations sharing the same fetid air, the same floorboards tacky with substances you don't want to identify. In your head you're screaming, this is not survivable. Humans can't live like this. Spoiler, they did. By the thousands. You knew? Asks a woman with a face so weathered she could be 30 or 60. Impossible to tell. She's Irish, you can tell from the accent, probably part of the massive wave that fled the potato famine only to find this American paradise. The pump's already got a line, she says, nodding toward the door. Better hurry if you want water today. Wait, did she say the pump? As in singular, one water source for hundreds of people? How many people live in this building, you ask, trying to get your bearings. She cackles, showing gaps where teeth should be. Building? You mean the whole block? Thousands, love. This building alone, probably 200 or so, but who's counting? You move toward what passes for a window, a small opening covered with paper instead of glass, letting in a weak, greyish light that does nothing to dispel the gloom. Tearing a small hole, you peer out into what should be a street, but is actually more like a narrow canyon between towering tenements. The buildings lean toward each other, blocking out the sky. At the bottom of this urban ravine, a river of filth flows down the centre. Yesterday's chamber pots, food waste, and God knows what else. Your stomach flips. Unlike your comfortable bed back home, there's no heading to a private bathroom for your morning routine. Instead, there's a communal outhouse in the back courtyard, if you're lucky enough to have one. Many just use chamber pots, emptied unceremoniously out the window with a half-hearted, "Look out below." If you're looking for breakfast, the woman continues, Maggie on the second floor sells stale bread, only half mouldy today, if we're lucky. As you pick your way across the room, careful not to step on sleeping bodies, your foot connects with something solid, a bottle. The room is littered with them. Cheap liquor is one of the few reliable comforts in 5 Points. Who could blame them? Reality is better kept at a distance when it looks like this. The hallway outside is dark, the walls slick with a substance you don't want to identify. The smell is worse here, concentrated and inescapable. You place your hand on the wall for balance and immediately regret it, feeling something soft and fuzzy, mold growing in patches like some alien landscape. "Hurry up!" someone hisses behind you, shoving past. "I gotta get to the sweatshop by 6 or they'll dock my pay." Following this shadow, you navigate down a staircase that creaks so ominously you're certain it will collapse. Each step bows in the middle, worn down by thousands of feet over decades. The building itself seems alive, groaning and shifting as people move through its decayed arteries. The sound grows louder as you near the bottom, hundreds of voices creating a chaotic symphony. 5 Points is waking up. Outside, the narrow street is already filled with people. Peddlers shout their wares, children dart between legs, women balance impossible loads on their heads, and men huddle in tense groups planning the day's hustle. And there it is. The water pump, one cast iron spigot for hundreds of people, with a line stretching down the block. Some have been waiting since before dawn. A fight breaks out as someone tries to cut in line. Nobody intervenes. This is just morning in 5 Points. "First time?" asks a boy, maybe 10 years old, but with eyes far older. His accent marks him as Italian, one of the newer groups to call this hellscape home. Before the Irish, it was Germans and Dutch. After the Irish came Italians and Chinese. 5 Points has always been where America stashes its newest arrivals. The trick is to cup your hands just right, he demonstrates, so you don't lose a drop. Some days, they shut it off by noon. This casual comment hits you like a brick. Water, that thing you take completely for granted, is a precious and limited resource here. No tap in your apartment, no water pitcher in your fridge, just this single public pump with rusty water that probably carries as many diseases as it prevents. What about food? You ask, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in your stomach. The boy grins, revealing surprisingly white teeth. "Follow me. I know where the bakery tosses day-olds." As you trail behind him, you notice how he moves, fluid, alert, like a small predator. Survival here requires a different kind of intelligence. 5 Points children don't have childhoods, they have apprenticeships in staying alive. Turning a corner, you enter what must be the main thoroughfare of 5 Points, the infamous intersection where 5 streets meet, creating the star-shaped crossroads that gave this neighborhood its name. It's a shock of activity, color, and noise after the dim tenement. "Bread, fresh bread," calls a woman with a basket, though the loaves look anything but fresh. "Fish catch from the harbour," shouts another, selling what appear to be fish heads and tails, the scraps left after the good parts went to wealthy homes uptown. "Stay close," your guide warns, "cut purses everywhere." He's not exaggerating. You spot at least 3 pickpocketing attempts in as many minutes. 5 Points operates on its own economy, part legitimate trade, mostly exploitation and theft. Everyone is trying to get something from someone else because resources are so desperately scarce. A commotion erupts ahead. The police are conducting a raid, dragging people from a basement gin shop. These aren't the polished officers of your time. These cops are as brutal as the neighborhood they patrol, cracking heads first and asking questions never. "Paddy wagon," your guide mutters. "Best stay back." The police load their struggling captives into a wagon bound for the nearby Tombs, the city prison that looms over 5 Points like a physical manifestation of threat, one day breaking the law, the next day locked away. The cycle is as predictable as it is inescapable. "That's Bandit's Roost!" The boy points to a particularly ominous alley. "Don't go there. Ever." You squint down the narrow passage, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Men in bowler hats loiter at the entrance, sizing up passers-by with predatory calculation. The alley seems to funnel into darkness, leading to who knows what criminal enterprises beyond. "What happens there?" you ask, though you can guess. "People go in. Sometimes they don't come out." He shrugs, as if discussing the weather. "That's 5 Points." The casualness with which he addresses potential murder is perhaps the most disturbing part. Death here isn't an event, it's ambient background noise. People disappear daily to disease, violence, addiction, incarceration. No one has the luxury of mourning. A church bell rings somewhere, cutting through the cacophony. 6 o'clock. The boy's eyes widen. Gotta go factory whistles about to blow. He darts away, vanishing into the crowd before you can thank him. All around, the energy shifts as 5 Points transitions from night to day fully. Those who have legitimate work in factories, sweatshops, or service rush to their posts. Those who survive through less official means stake out territories for the day's activities. Your stomach growls, reminding you of unattended needs. You haven't eaten, haven't found water, haven't figured out the most basic elements of survival, and it's only been an hour in 5 Points. A woman staggers past, eyes glazed from drink or lack of sleep or both. 3 small children trail behind her like ducklings, their clothes so ragged they barely qualify as clothing. The smallest can't be more than 4, already carrying a bundle of rags nearly as big as herself. Child labour isn't just common here, it's necessary for family survival. "Penny for the hungry?" asks an old man, his hand outstretched. His fingers are twisted from decades of manual labour, knuckles swollen with arthritis. What happens when you can no longer work in a place where your value is measured solely by your productivity? You reach for a coin before remembering, you have nothing to give. You're as destitute as everyone else here. The man's face hardens at your empty gesture, another broken promise in a life full of them. "Sorry," you mutter, but he's already moved on to the next potential donor. The sun has risen higher now, illuminating 5 Points in all its horrific glory. The tenements rise 5, 6, 7 stories high, with laundry strung between them like grotesque party decorations. Every window that can open is open, a desperate attempt to circulate air in buildings designed to maximize profit, not human comforts. And the people, my God, the people. Everywhere you look, bodies in motion. 5 Points makes Times Square look positively spacious. There's no concept of personal space, no bubble of privacy. Humanity exists in one churning collective mass. "You lost?" asks a woman balancing a basket of apples on her hip. Her accent places her as a native New Yorker, which makes her something of a rarity here. "Just taking it all in," you reply, unable to articulate the overwhelming assault on your senses. She snorts. "First day in the Points, you'll either be dead or wish you were by sundown." With that cheerful assessment, she moves on, calling out her wares. "Apples 2 for a penny." A fight erupts nearby. two men grappling over what appears to be a loaf of bread. No one intervenes. In fact, a small crowd gathers, some calling encouragement, others placing bets. Entertainment is where you find it in 5 Points. The fight ends as quickly as it began, one man fleeing with the prize, the other nursing a bloodied nose. The crowd disperses, disappointment evident. The brief drama concluded, they return to the grinding business of survival. Make way, make way. A wagon pushes through the crowd, piled high with what appear to be rags. As it passes, you realize it's not carrying rags at all. It's collecting the dead. Several bodies lie atop the pile, uncovered and undignified. Most are small, children who couldn't survive the brutal conditions. Their tiny forms look like discarded dolls, limbs akimbo. Cholera's back, someone mutters nearby. Third outbreak this year. The casual reference to epidemic disease chills you. In your time, cholera is something that happens in history books or distant countries on the news. Here, it's a seasonal visitor, as predictable as winter snow. You find yourself following the death wagon, morbid curiosity pulling you along. It turns down a side street, heading toward what can only be a mass grave. New York's Potter's Field, where the anonymous poor are stacked like cordwood, unmarked and unmourned. "You looking for someone?" asks the driver, mistaking your horrified fascination for bereavement. "No, I've never seen..." He spits tobacco juice, narrowly missing your foot. "Stick around 5 Points long enough, you'll see plenty. Might end up on my wagon yourself." With that cheerful thought, he flicks the reins and continues on his grim journey, leaving you standing in the middle of the street, adrift in this sea of humanity. A bell rings again. 7 o'clock. The day has barely begun, and already you've witnessed more suffering than most modern Americans see in a lifetime. The weight of it sits heavy on your chest, making each breath an effort. In the distance, smoke rises from factory chimneys, beckoning the workforce. For many in 5 Points, those smokestacks represent the only path out, grueling labour that might eventually earn enough to escape to slightly better conditions. Until then, they endure, they adapt, they survive, and now so must you, because in 5 Points, that's the only activity that matters. Morning has fully arrived in the most notorious slum in American history. The day stretches ahead, full of dangers and possibilities. The rules of survival are still unclear, but one thing is certain. 5 Points waits for no one, and it forgives nothing. Welcome to hell on earth. Try not to die before lunch. Your stomach growls so loudly that a passing woman actually turns to look at you. Yeah, hunger's gonna be your first problem. Not the abstract, I skipped breakfast kind of hunger. The real gnawing pain that ruled life in 5 Points. "You working or begging today?" asks a man, leaning against a lamppost. His face is a roadmap of scars, one eye clouded with a milky cataract. "'Cause if you're begging, this corner's taken." "Working," you say automatically, though you have no idea what kind of work you'd find in 1850s 5 Points. He grunts, not believing you. Germans got the breweries locked up, Irish got the construction and police, Italians got the fruit stands, coloureds got the worst of everything. What's left for you? It's a fair question. 5 Points is a patchwork of ethnic territories, each group carving out economic niches through necessity and exclusion. Who you are determines what you can do, where you can go, even whether you'll survive the day. "I'm looking," you manage. "Ain't we all?" He spits a stream of tobacco juice that narrowly misses your foot. "Try the rag shop on Mulberry. They're always hiring. Course, you'll be dead of consumption in a year, but that's life, innit?" With that cheerful advice, he turns away, already forgetting you. That's 5 Points in a nutshell. Everyone's problem is their own problem. You sink or swim alone. The streets have transformed in the hour since you woke. Now they're rivers of humanity flowing toward work. Men with calloused hands and hollow eyes. women with babies strapped to their backs, and children. So many children, none looking like children should. Penny paper, getcha penny paper. A boy no older than 8 darts through the crowd, waving newspapers. His bare feet navigate the filthy street with practiced ease, dodging horse droppings and worse. Fire in the 4th Ward, 3 dead, read all about it. You follow him, figuring a newspaper might offer clues about jobs. He stops to make a sale, and you notice his hands, fingers black with ink, nails bitten to the quick. This kid has probably been working since he could walk. "Hey, paperboy," you call. "Where do people find work around here?" He sizes you up with eyes too old for his face. "Depends what you can do. Nothing? Then you're hauling at the docks. Got skills? Find your people. Irish with Irish, German with German, Italians down that way, Chinese keep to themselves. What about the factories?" Brooks Brothers' got a clothing factory over on Cherry Street. Pays shit, but it's inside. Better than the docks when winter comes. He shrugs, already losing interest. Penny paper? You don't have a penny. You don't have anything. The boy notices your empty hands and vanishes into the crowd. No time to waste on non-customers. A police whistle shrieks nearby, followed by shouts. The crowd parts as 2 officers drag a struggling man toward a paddy wagon. His crime? Impossible to tell. Could be theft, public drunkenness, or simply being in the wrong place with the wrong complexion. "O'Malley finally caught Twisted Jack," says a woman selling apples from a cart. "Been robbing folk coming home from the factories for weeks." "That ain't Jack," her neighbour counters. "Jack's taller. That's just some poor bastard who couldn't run fast enough." They debate the merits of this arrest while the man's screams fade, swallowed by the rumble of wagon wheels on cobblestone. Justice in 5 Points is swift, brutal, and often misdirected. The morning sun struggles to penetrate the narrow streets, creating strange shadows between buildings. Despite the early hour, the air is already thick with coal smoke from factories and cooking fires. It catches in your throat, making each breath a conscious effort. You turn onto Mulberry Street following the rag picker's suggestion. The buildings here lean so far over the street they nearly touch, creating a canyon of brick and desperation. Laundry hangs from every window, dripping onto passers-by below. The smell. God, the smell. Unwashed bodies, rotting food, human waste, and something else. Something industrial and chemical that burns your nostrils. And there it is. The rag shop. From outside, it looks almost normal, a storefront with a faded sign. Inside is another story. The door creaks open to reveal a scene from a nightmare. Dozens of people, mostly women and children, hunch over massive piles of rags. They sort through what appears to be garbage, torn clothing, discarded linens, scraps of material in various states of decay. The air is thick with fibres and dust, visible in the few shafts of light that penetrate small, grimy windows. Everyone is coughing, a constant symphony of hacks, wheezes, and wet, rattling exhalations. Tuberculosis central. You can practically see the bacteria floating in the air. "You looking for work or buying?" asks a mountain of a man blocking your way further in. His accent is German, his knuckles scarred from countless fights. "Work," you say, immediately regretting it as you see the conditions more clearly. Sorting or picking. Sorters stay here 10 hours, 6 days, $2 a week. Pickers go out, find rags, bring them back, get paid by weight. $2 a week. Even in 1850s money, that's barely survival wages. But looking around, you realise this might be as good as it gets for many in 5 Points. "I'll pick," you decide, preferring to take your chances on the streets rather than in this tuberculosis factory. He hands you a burlap sack with a strap. Bring back clean ones only. No shit, no blood, no dead rats. We find that stuff, we dock your pay. Come back by sunset or don't come back at all. And just like that, you're employed as a rag picker in 5 Points. The bottom rung of a very tall, very slippery ladder. Outside, you take a deep breath of relatively fresher air, wondering where to begin. Other rag pickers are already scattering to their territories, knowing the best spots through years of experience. First day, a woman sidles up beside you, her own sack already half full, though the day has barely begun. Her accent marks her as Irish, probably famine-fled like so many here. You got that new look, like you still expect things to make sense. That obvious, huh? Follow me if you want. I know where the rich folks dump their linens. You fall in step beside her, grateful for any guidance in this alien world. She moves with purpose through the labyrinth of 5 Points, taking shortcuts through alleys so narrow you have to turn sideways to pass. Name's Mary, she offers. Been here 3 years. Came over when the potatoes went black and half my village starved. The famine, you say, remembering history books. Wasn't no famine, her voice hardens. Was murder, plenty of food in Ireland. English just shipped it all out while we died. Called it God's will, they did. The bitterness in her voice cuts like a knife. This isn't distant history to her. It's raw wound. She carries Ireland's trauma with her through these filthy streets. Another burden alongside her rag sack. My man died on the crossing, she continues. Ship fever. They wrapped him in canvas and dropped him in the Atlantic. Not even a proper Catholic burial. I'm sorry, you say, inadequately. Sorry don't fill bellies. She stops suddenly at a corner where the neighbourhood begins to change. The buildings are slightly better maintained, the streets marginally cleaner. This here's the border. Past this is where the better sort live. Not rich, but trade folk. They throw out better rags. You follow Mary as she ducks down an alley behind a row of shops. Behind each building sits a trash heap, the day's target. She attacks the first pile with practiced efficiency, pulling out anything fabric and stuffing it in her sack. Don't just stand there, she hisses. This is the best spot. Won't be empty long. You dig in, trying not to think about what else might be in these piles. Your fingers close around something soft, a discarded shirt with a torn sleeve. Into the sack it goes, a stained tablecloth, a child's dress with missing buttons. Each find goes into your gradually filling bag. Watch for rats, Mary warns. They don't like being disturbed. As if on cue, something large and furry shoots out from the pile, brushing against your leg. You jump back with a yelp that makes Mary laugh. 5 Points rats are like cats elsewhere, she says, and the cats are like small dogs, and the dogs, she shudders. Well, best not meet the dogs in the dark. As you work, Mary explains the rag picker's place in 5 Points economy. The rags you collect will be sorted at the shop, then sold to paper mills where they're broken down into pulp for making paper. The better pieces might become shoddy, recycled fabric ground up and rewoven into cheap cloth. Nothing is wasted. Nothing can be when resources are so scarce. By midday, your sack is half full and your back is screaming. Mary seems invigorated by the work, or at least resigned to it. She straightens up, stretching. Dinner, she announces, can't work on empty. You follow her to a street vendor selling what he claims is beef stew for 2 cents a bowl. The meat floating in the greasy broth could be anything: horse, rat, dog. But it's hot and your body needs fuel. Mary pays for both of you, waving away your thanks. You'll do the same when you can. That's how we survive here. The stew sits heavy in your stomach as you continue your rag-picking journey. Mary leads you through a complex geography of 5 points, each street representing a different risk and opportunity. That there's a brothel, she points discreetly to a building with red curtains, and that's an opium den. Chinese run it, but everyone goes. Lots of rag picking there. Drunks and hopheads lose their clothes often enough. You pass a factory where the windows are open due to the heat inside. The sound that emerges is deafening. Hundreds of sewing machines running at once, punctuated by shouts from floor managers. Through the windows you glimpse rows of hunched figures, mostly women working at a frantic pace. Brooks Brothers, Mary explains, making uniforms for the rich boys to play soldier in, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. What do they make, you ask? $4 a week if they're lucky, half that for the children. Children? She gives you a look like you're simple. Coarse children, tiny fingers, good for detailed work. They start at 6, 7 years old, better than chimney sweeping, which kills them faster. As if to illustrate her point, a group of sooty-faced boys trudges past, carrying the tools of the chimney sweep's trade. None look older than 10, all have the hollow-cheeked, sunken-eyed look of the chronically malnourished. One coughs continuously, a deep hack that surely signals the early stages of chimney sweep's cancer, a painful death sentence. Least they work, Mary nods toward the boys, better than the gangsters. On cue, a group of tough-looking teenagers swaggers past wearing identical red kerchiefs, gang colours in 1850s New York. Dead rabbits, Mary whispers. Irish gang. They protect our neighbourhoods from the Bowery boys and the plug uglies. Course they also shake down the shopkeepers for protection money. The boys, because despite their hard expressions they are just boys, carry an assortment of crude weapons, clubs, knives, brass knuckles. Their eyes scan the street continuously, looking for threats or opportunities. They don't bother us rag pickers, Mary assures you. We're too poor to rob, but don't make eye contact all the same. You keep your gaze down until they pass, feeling their dangerous energy like a physical force. In 5 Points, violence isn't an aberration, it's a survival strategy, a career path, sometimes a necessity. The afternoon wears on, your sack growing heavier with each scavenged piece of fabric. Your hands are raw, your back aching, but Mary shows no signs of slowing down. We need full sacks, she explains. Half full don't pay enough for dinner and lodging. You pass a construction site where a crew of burly Irishmen works on a new tenement. Despite the obvious danger, no safety equipment, rickety scaffolding, men balancing on narrow beams 5 stories up. There's a line of hopefuls waiting for any opening. My cousin fell last year, Mary says, following your gaze. Broke his back. No work, no money, no doctor. Died a month later, leaving 5 little ones. His widow takes in laundry now, when her hands ain't too raw to work. The casualness with which she relates this tragedy speaks volumes about life in 5 Points. Death isn't an anomaly, it's a neighbour, a constant companion, an expected visitor. As afternoon slides toward evening, you and Mary make your way back toward the rag shop, sacks now bulging. The streets have a different energy now. Workers returning from factories, children playing in gutters, vendors hawking evening meals. The tenements loom overhead, already glowing with cooking fires and candles, hundreds of lives stacked atop one another. What happens after we sell these, you ask, adjusting your heavy sack. If we get enough coin, lodging house for a proper bed. If not, the mission might have space. She pauses. Unless you got family here, someone's floor to sleep on. The question highlights another brutal reality of 5 Points. Without connections, without community, survival becomes exponentially harder. Those without family or ethnic ties often face the worst outcomes. No family, you admit. Stick with me then, she offers. Safety in numbers, especially after dark. The sun is already disappearing behind the tenements, casting long shadows across streets that become more dangerous by the minute. Gas lamps flicker to life, providing islands of weak light in a sea of gathering darkness. You pass a saloon where piano music spills onto the street along with drunken laughter. From another building comes the sounds of fighting, shouts, breaking glass, a woman's scream. No one investigates, no one intervenes. That's Bottle Alley. Mary points to a particularly dark passage between buildings. Don't go there at night or day, come to think of it. The rag shop is crowded when you arrive, other pickers lined up to sell their day's finds. The German manager weighs each sack, making arbitrary deductions for rags he deems unsuitable. Arguments break out, quickly squashed by the threat of no payment at all. When your turn comes, your sack yields 37 cents, a fortune compared to what you expected, but barely enough for a meal and a bed. Mary does slightly better at 42 cents. Not bad for your first day, she says as you exit into the now dark street. Most don't find the good spots their first time out. Thanks to you, you acknowledge. We help our own, she says simply. Irish look after Irish, Italians for Italians, Chinese for Chinese. It's the only way. That's the unspoken system of 5 points. Mutual aid within ethnic enclaves, suspicion or open hostility between them. It's not prejudice so much as desperate pragmatism. Resources are so scarce that taking care of outsiders feels impossible. Mary leads you to a dingy shop selling what passes for dinner in 5 points. A stew similar to lunch, but with more mysterious meat floating in grease. 2 bowls and a hunk of bread costs 15 cents, leaving you with 22 for lodging. As you eat, standing at a crowded counter, Mary points out the various characters that make up 5 Points' evening crowd. That's old Tom, she nods toward a man with an impressive beard. Best pickpocket in the Points. They say he can lift your teeth while you're talking and you won't notice till you try to eat. And her? You indicate a well-dressed woman who seems out of place. Mission lady. Comes down from uptown to save our souls. Mary's tone makes it clear what she thinks of such efforts. They want us sober and grateful, but don't much care if we're housed or fed. The woman distributes religious tracts to uninterested passers-by. A few children trail her, hoping for pennies or treats that sometimes accompany the salvation pitch. And them? You point to a group of tough-looking men gathered at the corner. Mary's voice drops to a whisper. 5 Pointers, worst gang in the city. They control everything. Protection rackets, gambling, girls. Cross them and you disappear. As if sensing your attention, one of the men glances your way. You quickly look down at your bowl, heart racing. Even without understanding the specific power dynamics, you recognize predators when you see them. Finish up, Mary urges. We need to find lodging before the good spots fill. The good spots turn out to be relative. Mary leads you to a lodging house on Baxter Street, a 5-story tenement with rooms subdivided into impossibly small sleeping spaces. For 20 cents each, you get floor space in a room with 14 other people, a luxury compared to those who sleep in shifts or in the streets. Home, sweet home, Mary says with grim humour as you enter the dark, fetid room. Find a spot and hold it, and sleep with anything valuable under your head, or it won't be there come morning. You settle onto a patch of bare floor, using your coat, which you've mysteriously acquired in this historical nightmare, as both mattress and pillow. Around you, the sounds of 5 Points at night filter through thin walls. Arguments, laughter, crying babies, drunken singing, occasional screams. First day's the worst, Mary says, curling up nearby. After a while, you stop noticing how bad it is. That's when you know 5 Points has got you for good. As you lie there, body aching from unaccustomed labor, you wonder about the people who lived this reality not as a historical tourism experience, but as their actual lives. How did they endure? What kept them going in conditions that seem unsurvivable? The answer, perhaps, lies in Mary's matter-of-fact resilience. The people of 5 Points survived because the alternative was death, and human beings will endure almost anything to live one more day. They created community where none should have been possible. They found moments of joy in a landscape of suffering. They persisted. Tomorrow will bring another day of rag picking, another struggle for pennies and survival. But for now, in this crowded room full of strangers bound by common poverty, there is a strange kind of peace. Not comfort, never that, but the collective exhale of people who've made it through one more day in America's most notorious slum. Outside, 5 Points continues its nocturnal transformation, becoming even more dangerous as darkness provides cover for its worst elements. But that's a problem for tomorrow. For now, exhaustion pulls you toward unconsciousness. Your first day of work in 5 Points complete. You've survived. In this place, that counts as victory. Sleep in 5 Points doesn't last long. You're jolted awake by someone stepping over you in the dark, heading out for early morning work. Your back aches from the hard floor, and there's a suspicious wetness seeping through your coat from whatever was spilled there before you claimed the spot. Mary is already up, tying back her hair with a frayed ribbon. "Best get moving," she mutters. Stay too long and they charge another night's lodging. Outside, 5 Points is transforming again. Not quite night, not quite day, that strange in-between time when the night workers stagger home and the day workers emerge, bleary-eyed and hungry. The streets buzz with a different energy now, less frantic, more social. "This way," Mary says, tugging your sleeve. "Might be coffee at the Mission if we hurry." You follow her through streets that seem different in the early light. The same buildings, sure, but the mood has shifted. Neighbours call greetings to each other. Women chat as they haul water from the pump. A group of children kicks a ball made of rags in a rare moment of actual childhood. For all its horrors, 5 Points has a community, several overlapping ones in fact. The Mission sits at the edge of the neighbourhood, a plain building with a cross over the door. A line has already formed, mostly women and children hoping for breakfast. The smell of weak coffee and porridge makes your stomach growl embarrassingly loud. "Stand up straight," Mary instructs, pinching colour into her pale cheeks. "Look poor but respectable. They like to think they're saving the deserving poor, not the regular kind." You take your place in line, practicing your respectable but needy expression. Ahead, a stern-faced woman in a high-collared dress examines each supplicant before granting or denying entry. "She's brutal," whispers a woman behind you, a baby balanced on her hip. Last week she turned away the O'Malley family because Mr. O'Malley had the smell of whiskey on him. 6 kids went hungry because their da had a nip to warm up before his night shift. The Mission lady, clearly from one of the wealthy uptown neighbourhoods, looks down her nose at a young Italian woman switching to painfully slow English. "Have you found Jesus?" she enunciates, as if speaking to a toddler, the Italian woman, who probably speaks better English than she's letting on, shrugs and nods vigorously. See, Jesus, very good. Food, please?" The Mission lady sighs but waves her in, another soul nominally saved in exchange for lukewarm porridge. When your turn comes, the inspection is just as thorough. "Are you employed?" she demands. "Yes, ma'am. Rag picking," you respond, using Mary's coaching. And you attend church services?" "Whenever possible, ma'am." A safe answer. She seems satisfied and waves you through. Inside, the mission is clean but sparse. Wooden benches around plain tables, biblical quotes painted on the walls. A harried-looking man dispenses coffee from a massive pot while two young women serve porridge from steaming cauldrons. "No talking!" hisses a mission worker as you open your mouth to thank her for the bowl. Reflection and gratitude only. You sit in enforced silence, shoveling the bland porridge into your mouth. It's barely seasoned, probably made with the cheapest oats available, but it's hot and filling. Around you, 5 Points residents do the same, some sneaking extra bread into pockets for later. Mary catches your eye and nods slightly toward the door. Time to go. You've gotten what you came for. No sense risking ejection for breaking the arbitrary rules. Back outside, the day has fully begun. The streets teem with life in all its 5 Points variety. Peddlers hawk their wares from carts and baskets. A knife sharpener sets up his wheel, the metal on stone screech adding to the cacophony. Children dart between adults, some playing, others already working as messengers or sellers. "That's better," Mary says, stretching. "Can't stand that quiet they force on you, like we're supposed to be ashamed of eating." "Where to now?" you ask, feeling oddly energized after food and rest. "It's Sunday," she reminds you. "No rag shop today, day of rest supposedly. What do people do with a day off in 5 Points?" Mary's laugh is genuine, crinkling the corners of her eyes. "Rest? Who said anything about rest? Just different work. Laundry, mending, brewing beer if you're lucky enough to have space, and for those with coin to spare." She gestures toward the heart of 5 Points. Pleasure. 5 Points on a Sunday is a revelation. With many businesses closed and factory shifts reduced, the neighborhood becomes something else entirely. A vibrant, chaotic festival of humanity. People who spend 6 days a week working themselves to exhaustion use this precious free time to actually live. "Paradise Square," Mary announces as you enter a small opening between buildings. It's a generous name for what's essentially just a slightly wider intersection, but today it's transformed. A fiddler plays a lively Irish jig while a circle of men and women dance, their movements quick and precise despite their obvious exhaustion. Nearby, a group of black men perform a different kind of dance, rhythmic, percussive, their feet creating complex patterns against the cobblestones. "Step dancing," Mary explains, nodding toward the Irish dancers, "and that there's tap dancing. The Collards invented it, but now everybody's mixing it up together. Best dancers in 5 Points do both styles. The music is infectious, spilling out from bars and street corners. Irish fiddles blend with African drumming. Someone plays a Chinese erhu, its wailing strings cutting through the din. 5 Points may be segregated in many ways, but its sounds have no boundaries." "Mary O'Sullivan, that really you?" A burly man with an impressive moustache pushes through the crowd, arms outstretched. Mary's face lights up with recognition. "Paddy Mulligan, when'd you get out of the tombs?" "Tuesday last. Judge took pity, reduced my sentence." He wraps Mary in a bear hug that lifts her off her feet. "Who's your friend?" You're introduced as Mary's cousin, newly arrived from Ireland, a fiction she creates smoothly, giving you a cover story and protection in one move. Paddy accepts this without question. New arrivals are common enough. Come on then, family drinks at Finnegan's. You follow them to a dingy saloon already packed despite the early hour. Inside, it's dim and smoky, smelling of spilled beer and unwashed bodies. But there's genuine warmth here too. People greeting each other, sharing stories, temporarily forgetting the hardships waiting outside. "First round's on me," Paddy announces grandly, slapping coins on the bar. "Just got paid for unloading at the docks." The beer arrives in chipped mugs, dark, foamy, and probably safer than the water. You take a cautious sip and nearly choke. It's strong, barely cooled, and tastes vaguely medicinal. Good, ain't it? Paddy grins at your reaction. Finnegan brews it in the basement, puts something special in it. He won't say what. Best not to ask, Mary adds with a wink. The saloon grows more crowded as morning slides into afternoon. A battered piano in the corner comes to life, played by a man missing several fingers. Nobody seems to mind the occasional wrong note. It's the spirit that counts. Paddy introduces you around as Mary's cousin, each introduction conferring a little more protection, a little more community. You meet dock workers with hands like leather, seamstresses with permanently bent postures, a chimney sweep whose laugh inevitably dissolves into coughing. "That's Maggie Malone," Mary whispers, nodding toward a hard-faced woman holding court in the corner. They call her Hellcat Maggie, runs with the dead rabbits, filed her teeth into points and wears brass fingernails in a fight. You try not to stare at the woman's smile, which does indeed reveal filed teeth. The casual mention of brass fingernails as weapons makes your skin crawl, but no one else seems fazed. "And that's Dandy Johnny over there," Paddy points to a well-dressed man surrounded by admirers. "Gentleman thief. They say he can pick a lock faster than you can blink. 5 points royalty, holding court in a dive bar on Sunday morning. The neighborhood has its own celebrities, its own hierarchy, completely separate from the wealthy New York elite who occasionally slum here for exotic thrills." "Speaking of celebrities," Mary nudges you, "look who's come to stare at the animals." A group of well-dressed men and women enter, clearly from uptown based on their clothes and uncomfortable expressions. They're led by a confident man who seems familiar with the saloon. Tourists, Paddy spits, rich folk coming to gawk at how the other half lives. Been happening since that Dickens fella wrote about us. Charles Dickens. Of course, the famous author visited 5 Points in 1842 and wrote about it in American Notes, putting the neighborhood on the map as the ultimate urban slum. Now it's a perverse attraction for thrill-seeking upper classes. That guide charges them $5 a head, Mary explains, promises them glimpses of genuine vice and depravity. They'll hit the dance halls, brothels and opium dens, then go home feeling like adventurers. The tourists move through the saloon, barely concealing their mixture of fascination and disgust. One woman holds a perfumed handkerchief to her nose, eyes wide above it. They don't speak to any residents, just observe as if visiting a zoo. Next, they'll want to see the Irish jig, Paddy predicts bitterly, like we're performing monkeys. Sure enough, the guide announces that the group will now witness authentic ethnic dancing at Paradise Square. They file out, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and the bitter taste of being treated as exhibits. "Let's get some air," Mary suggests, sensing the darkening mood. Outside, 5 Points has fully embraced its day of leisure. Despite the grinding poverty, despite the looming return to brutal labor tomorrow, people have found ways to enjoy this moment of freedom. Children play games with improvised toys, marbles made from clay, hoops from old barrel rings, balls from bundled rags. Women gather on stoops, mending clothes and sharing gossip. Men pitch pennies against walls or gather around makeshift gambling tables, risking their meager earnings for the chance at something more. "Look there," Mary points to where the cobblestones open up around Paradise Square. "That's what the tourists really came to see." A crowd has gathered around 2 men locked in what appears to be a dance battle. One, a tall black man, performs intricate footwork that creates percussion against the street. The other, an Irish lad barely out of his teens, responds with his own steps, attempting to match and then surpass his opponent's complexity. Master Juba against Jack Diamond, Paddy explains, pushing closer for a better view. Best dancers in the points. Master Juba, William Henry Lane, was a legendary figure in 5 points, one of the few black performers to achieve fame among white audiences as well. His fusion of Irish step dancing with African rhythms was creating something entirely new before your eyes, what would eventually be known as tap dancing. The crowd erupts as Juba executes a particularly complex sequence, his feet moving almost too fast to follow. 5 points residents of all backgrounds cheer together, ethnic divisions temporarily forgotten in appreciation of genuine artistry. That's 5 points for you, Mary says, a touch of pride in her voice. Worst place in America, they say, but we made something they ain't got nowhere else. It's true. For all its squalor and danger, 5 Points has become an unlikely cultural cauldron, mixing European, African and Asian traditions into something uniquely American. The neighborhood's very density forces different groups into contact, creating frictions, but also unexpected collaborations. As the dance battle concludes with good-natured handshakes, the crowd disperses toward other Sunday entertainments. Some head for churches, Catholic, Protestant, or storefront congregations with their own unique traditions. Others drift toward the theatres that offer cheap seats and bawdy shows. Come on, Mary tugs your sleeve. While the mission ladies are in church, the boxing starts. She leads you down a narrow alley and through a nondescript door into what appears to be a basement tavern. The room is packed with bodies, all focused on a cleared space in the centre where 2 shirtless men circle each other, fists raised. Bare knuckle, Paddy explains, appearing beside you with fresh beers. None of them fancy Queensberry rules here. The fighters are evenly matched, 1 Irish, 1 German, both with the hard, lean bodies of men who perform physical labour 6 days a week and fight for extra coins on the 7th. Blood already streams from the Irishman's eyebrow, but he grins through it, seemingly energised by the damage. Bets change hands rapidly, shouted across the room in multiple languages. You noticed Dandy Johnny from the saloon earlier, moving through the crowd collecting wagers in a small notebook. 5 Points might be dirt poor, but where there's entertainment, there's gambling. The fight is brutal and quick. The German catches a solid right to the jaw and goes down hard. The crowd roars, money changes hands, and almost immediately 2 new fighters take the centre. Brothers, Mary explains over the noise, fighting to see who takes their father's place on the docks after he lost his arm in the machinery. The casualness with which she describes this family tragedy, 2 brothers literally fighting for the chance to work a dangerous job, highlights again the matter-of-fact relationship 5 Points residents have with hardship. It's not dramatic to them, it's Tuesday. The basement grows hotter and more raucous with each fight. You find yourself swept up in the energy, shouting alongside strangers, momentarily forgetting the grim realities waiting outside. This, you realise, is the point. A few hours of escape, of sensation not directly tied to survival. Last fight, someone announces. Champion challenge. The crowd parts to reveal a mountain of a man, bare-chested and scarred from countless previous battles. He scans the room with practised arrogance. $5 to anyone who can last 3 minutes with Butcher Bill. Silence falls as men assess their chances against this human battering ram. $5 is nearly a week's wages for many here. A tempting prize, but at what cost? A young man steps forward, skinny but wiry, with the calloused hands of a labourer. I'll take that bet. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. That's Johnny Sullivan's boy, someone whispers. Father of 6. Desperate since the factory closed. The mismatch is painful to watch. The young father is game but outclassed, taking punishing blows while landing few of his own. Blood sprays from his nose, yet he stays upright through sheer determination. "Think of the children," someone shouts, encouragingly or mockingly. It's hard to tell. Somehow, impossibly, the young man is still standing when a pocket watch is produced and 3 minutes declared. The crowd erupts in cheers as $5 silver are pressed into his swollen hand. "Worth it?" you ask Mary, watching the man gingerly touch his possibly broken nose. "His family eats for a week," she shrugs. "You tell me." The brutal calculus of 5 points, weighing physical suffering against hunger, dignity against survival. Every choice comes with costs, none of them fair. As you emerge from the basement, blinking in the late afternoon light, 5 points has shifted again. The revelry continues, but with a sharper edge, as alcohol flows freely and old grievances resurface. Arguments break out more frequently. The police presence increases, officers moving in pairs through streets they'd avoided earlier. "Best head back soon," Mary advises. "Sundays get rough after dark." But there's one more 5 points institution she wants to show you first. She leads you to a narrow building wedged between 2 tenements, its windows glowing with warm light. "McSorley's," she announces. "Been here forever. Will be here after we're all dust." Inside, the famous ale house is packed but surprisingly orderly. Unlike the rough saloons elsewhere in 5 points, McSorley's maintains certain standards. No hard liquor, no women, except Mary, who's clearly an exception by virtue of neighborhood respect, and absolutely no fighting. The sawdust-covered floor muffles the babble of voices speaking at least a dozen languages. Old Mr. McSorley himself serves behind the bar, remembering every regular's name and preferred brew. The walls are covered with newspaper clippings, political cartoons, and memorabilia spanning decades. "Heart of the points, this place," Paddy says, somehow having found you again. "When the neighbourhood started going bad, McSorley's stayed good." You settle at a crowded table, squeezing in beside dock workers and factory hands enjoying their one day of leisure. The conversation flows as freely as the ale. Politics, work grievances, family troubles, neighbourhood gossip. For a few hours, the grinding reality of 5 points recedes, replaced by the simple pleasure of human connection. "See that man there?" Mary nods toward a distinguished-looking gentleman writing in a notebook. "Reporter. They come here to take the pulse of the neighborhood. Sometimes they even print what we actually say instead of making up horrors." The complicated relationship between 5 points and the outside world emerges in these conversations. Residents resent being poverty tourism attractions, but also want their stories told accurately. They hate the slum conditions, but fiercely defend their communities. They dream of escape, but maintain deep loyalty to the neighborhood that, however brutal, accepted them when other parts of America would not. As dusk approaches, the mood in McSorley's shifts subtly. People check pocket watches, finish drinks, prepare to head home before full dark brings out 5 points' most dangerous elements. "One more round," Paddy insists, signalling the barkeep to absent friends. The toast carries weight in a neighborhood where death comes early and often. Everyone at the table has lost someone to disease, accidents, violence, or the slow-motion disaster of grinding poverty. To absent friends, the table echoes, raising glasses. Outside, the first hints of 5 points' nocturnal transformation are visible. Women who work the streets emerge from tenements wearing their best attempts at finery. Gang members gather at corners, establishing territory. Those with homes to go to hurry toward them while the homeless stake out doorways and alleys for the night. I should check on my cousin, Mary says, finishing her ale. She's due any day now with her fourth. The casual mention of childbirth, a dangerous proposition anywhere in 1850s America, doubly so in 5 Points, reminds you of the constant precarity of life here. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed for anyone, but especially not for women bringing new life into these squalid conditions. As you leave McSorley's warm embrace, the evening chill cuts through your inadequate clothing. 5 Points after dark feels like a different place entirely. The same streets and buildings, but with shadows that conceal threats, movements that suggest danger. Stay close, Mary advises, leading you through back ways to avoid the more treacherous areas. And walk like you know where you're going, even if you don't. 5 Points survival advice, as practical as it is inadequate against the neighbourhood's more serious dangers, but Mary knows the way, guiding you through the labyrinth with the confidence of someone who's learned every shortcut and danger zone through hard experience. The day of relative leisure is ending. Tomorrow brings the return to rag-picking, to factories, to the relentless grind of 5 Points survival. But for now, with ale warming your belly and the memory of music and dancing still fresh, you understand something vital about this infamous slum. Even here, in America's most notorious neighborhood, people find ways to live rather than merely survive. It's not much, it's certainly not fair, but in the face of conditions that should crush all humanity from its residents, 5 Points stubbornly maintains its crooked heart, beating against all odds in the decaying center of America's greatest city. Morning comes with a new sound. Coughing, not the isolated hack of a chimney sweep or the occasional clearing of a smoker's throat, but a symphony of respiratory distress echoing through the tenement. It starts on the floor below, a deep, racking cough that sounds like it's tearing someone apart from the inside. Then another joins in from the room next door, and another. Christ, not again, Mary mutters, sitting up on her patch of floor. That's cholera for sure. The word hangs in the air, heavy with implication. Unlike your world with antibiotics and modern medicine, cholera in 1850s 5 Points is a death sentence for many. It spreads through contaminated water, which describes virtually all water in the neighborhood. Knew something was wrong yesterday, she continues, gathering her few possessions. Too many people missing from McSorley's. And didn't you notice Mrs. Donovan wasn't at the pump? She's there every morning, rain or shine. You hadn't noticed, not knowing the neighbourhood's rhythms yet, but now that Mary mentions it, there was a strange tension underneath yesterday's revelry, a forced quality to the celebrations as if people were trying to ignore something ominous lurking beneath the surface. What do we do? You ask, already dreading the answer. Do? We keep living. Mary's face hardens. We work. We eat if we're lucky. We stay away from the sick if we can. And we pray it passes us by. The brutal pragmatism of 5 Points hits you again. There are no sick days, no quarantine protocols, no safety nets. The choice is simple. Work despite the epidemic or starve because of it. Outside, the neighborhood feels different. People move faster, avoid eye contact, keep their distance when possible, which isn't very, given the crowding. A miasma of fear hangs over the already filthy streets. Don't drink the water, Mary warns, though you hardly needed the advice. Not that you should anyway, but especially not now. Beer and whiskey only. The alcohol kills the bad humours. Her folk medicine isn't entirely wrong. Alcohol might actually be safer than the contaminated water. But it's hardly a solution for children, pregnant women, or those who can't afford it. At the corner of Mulberry and Bayard, a crowd has gathered. At its centre, a man in a dark suit reads from an official-looking document. By order of the Metropolitan Board of Health, all residents of the affected buildings must vacate immediately for fumigation. "Bloody hell," mutters a man next to you. "They're clearing out the Bend." Mulberry Bend, the most notorious section of an already notorious neighbourhood, the curved street lined with the worst tenements, the most overcrowded buildings, the highest disease rates. If cholera has taken hold there, it could sweep through all of 5 Points like wildfire. "They never do this for just one case," Mary whispers. "Must be dozens already." A woman pushes forward, her face contorted with rage. "Where are we supposed to go?" she demands of the health official. "You're putting us out with nowhere." The man barely glances at her. "That's not the department's concern. You may return when the buildings are declared safe." "And when will that be?" another voice calls out. "When they're safe," he repeats, already turning away. The crowd's mood darkens dangerously. These are people with nowhere else to go, being forced from even their miserable homes with no alternatives offered. The health official senses the shift and signals to several policemen standing nearby who move forward, hands on their batons. "Don't get involved," Mary warns, pulling you back. "That's how people end up in the tombs." As if to emphasize her point, a shouting match erupts into violence. A man lunges at the health official, is intercepted by police, and goes down under a flurry of baton strikes. Women scream, children cry. 5 Points justice, swift and merciless. "Come on," Mary tugs harder. "Rag shop will be open despite everything. Cholera don't stop commerce." She's right. When you reach the shop, it's business as usual. The German manager hands out sacks without comment on the epidemic raging just blocks away. Profit margins are too thin, competition too fierce to close for something as common as disease. Uptown today, Mary decides. Better pickings and further from the sickness. You follow her north, away from 5 Points proper and into slightly better neighbourhoods. The buildings here are still tenements, but marginally better maintained. The streets, while not clean by modern standards, have less visible filth, but the real difference is the people. Fewer of them, for one thing, and less desperate looking. "Don't stare," Mary advises. "Act like you belong, or the shopkeepers call the police." You try to adopt her purposeful stride, though everything about this slightly more prosperous area fascinates you. The social gradient is visible on every corner. The further from 5 Points, the better the conditions, block by block. "My cousin died in the cholera outbreak of 49. Mary says suddenly as you pick through a promising trash heap. 3 days from first symptoms to death. Healthy as a horse until then. 22 years old. The casual mention of such personal tragedy speaks volumes about life expectancy in 5 Points. Death isn't unexpected, it's routine, especially from disease. What causes it, you ask, though you already know the answer from history books. Mary shrugs. Bad air, they say. Miasmas. That's why they're fumigating the buildings. She's not wrong. The germ theory of disease is still in its infancy in the 1850s. Most people, even doctors, believe disease spreads through foul air rather than contaminated water or person-to-person contact. As you work, you notice other signs of the outbreak's impact. A house with a black crepe ribbon on the door, someone already dead inside, a doctor's carriage outside a better tenement, the horses stamping impatiently while their owner tends to those who can afford his services. And, most telling, the absence of children playing in the streets. They've been kept inside, a futile attempt at protection. Heard the alderman's daughter died yesterday, says a rag picker who joins your scavenging. Uptown girl who came to do charity work at the mission, 20 years old. That'll change things, Mary predicts grimly. Poor folk dying is expected, rich folk dying gets attention. She's right again. 5 points. Disease outbreaks become civic emergencies only when they threaten to spread beyond the slum's boundaries. The lives of its residents are considered expendable. The lives of the wealthy are not. By midday, you've heard a dozen cholera stories, each more horrific than the last. The woman who went from healthy to dead in 18 hours. The family of 6 found dead in their room, bodies blue-black with disease. The building where so many died, they stacked corpses in the hallway until the death wagon came. Stop listening, Mary advises, seeing your growing horror. Nothing you can do except keep living. But ignoring the epidemic becomes impossible when you turn a corner and come face to face with its consequences. A death cart loaded high with bodies, men in protective cloths wrapping yet another victim, a small child whose mother wails inconsolably nearby. The corpse wagon attendants wear cloths soaked in vinegar over their faces, an inadequate protection against what they don't yet understand is waterborne bacteria. Jesus, you whisper, the scene searing itself into your memory. This isn't a history book illustration or a museum exhibit. It's happening right in front of you, the brutal reality of pre-modern disease. Keep moving, Mary says, but her voice lacks conviction. Even she, hardened by years in 5 points, finds this scene difficult to witness. The afternoon brings more grim evidence of cholera's hold on the neighbourhood. Buildings marked with quarantine signs, sidewalks sprinkled with lime in a misguided attempt to purify the air, people carrying bundles of possessions evicted from fumigated tenements with nowhere to go. We should check on Paddy, Mary suggests, clearly worried about your friend from yesterday. His building's right in the worst of it. You detour back toward 5 points proper, your sack only half full, but concern for Paddy overriding the need for more rags. The streets feel eerily quiet for midday. Many businesses closed, windows shuttered. Paddy's building stands at the curve of Mulberry Bend, a particularly squalid 5-story structure leaning precariously to one side. Even from outside you can hear coughing from multiple rooms. Paddy Mulligan, Mary calls up toward what she knows to be his window. You alive in there? A pale face appears at a 3rd-floor window. Mary, that you? It's me, they letting you stay? For now. His voice sounds weaker than yesterday. Half the building's down with it. Finnegan died this morning. Old Mrs. Cohen too. Mary's face tightens. You got symptoms? A pause. Just a little stomach trouble. Nothing serious. The lie hangs in the air. Stomach trouble is how cholera begins. Severe diarrhea leading to fatal dehydration, often within days or even hours. I'll bring you water, Mary offers, then catches herself. No, not water, whiskey. Clean the gut better. Don't come in, Paddy warns. Not safe. I'll manage. Another lie. Without help, without clean water, without medical care, Paddy's chances are slim. But what can you do? 5 points offers no good options, only degrees of terrible. We'll check tomorrow, Mary promises, her voice falsely bright. Rest up. She turns away, her face crumpling once Paddy can't see her. He's not going to make it, she whispers. That's the cholera look already. Sunken eyes, hollow voice. You want to argue, to offer hope, but what's the point? She knows 5 points better than you ever will. She's seen this play out before. As afternoon slides toward evening, the neighbourhood grows even quieter. The usual vendors are missing from street corners, few children dart between buildings. Even the police patrols have thinned, officers apparently reluctant to risk exposure. Where will we sleep? you ask, suddenly realizing your lodging house might be quarantined. Mission, maybe, Mary suggests without conviction. Or we pay extra for a room further uptown. Depends what we make today. You continue working, though your heart isn't in it. Every discarded garment now carries the spectre of disease. Was this shirt taken from a cholera victim? Did these rags once clean up a sick room? By late afternoon, you've cobbled together enough material to justify returning to the rag shop. The manager pays without comment, though the rate seems lower than yesterday. Fewer pickers means less competition, but also less market for the processed materials. With coins in hand, you and Mary face the evening's challenge, finding safe lodging. The usual flop houses are either closed for fumigation or packed with those displaced from worse accommodations. Let's try the church, Mary suggests, leading you toward a modest steeple several blocks from 5 Points proper. The church basement has already been converted to emergency housing. Pallets line the floor, each occupied by someone with nowhere else to go. A harried-looking nun moves between the makeshift beds, offering water and prayers in equal measure. "Sister Agnes," Mary calls softly. "Any space for 2 more?" The nun looks up, recognizing Mary from previous charity distributions. "In the corner, Mary. It's all we have left." You make your way to the indicated spot, a small area barely big enough for both of you, but infinitely better than the street. Around you, families huddle together, whispering in various languages. The fear is palpable, hanging in the air like the incense from earlier services. "Better than nothing," Mary says, settling onto the hard floor. And the sisters sometimes bring soup after evening prayers. "How long will the outbreak last?" you ask. She shrugs. "Week, month, till it burns through whoever's going to die and leaves the rest. No rhyme or reason to it. Strong men drop dead while sickly babies survive. The randomness is perhaps the most terrifying aspect. There's no way to know if you'll be next. No logical pattern to who lives and who dies. In your time, antibiotics would treat cholera easily. Here, it's a roll of the dice with death. Sister Agnes returns with 2 bowls of thin soup and hard bread. "God bless you," she says automatically, already moving to the next displaced family. You eat in silence, the church basement quiet except for muffled coughing and children's whimpers. It's a marked contrast to yesterday's lively scenes at Paradise Square and McSorley's, as if the neighbourhood holds its collective breath, waiting for the invisible killer to pass. "My mother used to say sickness was God testing our faith," Mary says suddenly. "But I reckon if God wanted to test rich folk, he'd give them cholera too. The bitter theology of 5 Points, a God who seems to punish poverty with disease, who allows children to die in squalor, while the wealthy remain safe in their uptown mansions. No wonder many here turn away from the church's promises." As night falls, candles provide the only light in the basement. Sister Agnes leads those willing in evening prayers, Latin words echoing against stone walls. Some join in, finding comfort in ritual. Others turn away, their faith another casualty of 5 Points hardship. "I keep thinking about Paddy," Mary whispers when prayers finish. "Alone up there, sick with no one to help." "Could we go back?" you suggest. "Bring him here?" She shakes her head. By now, he's either better or much worse. And if it's worse, she doesn't finish the thought. She doesn't need to. Sleep comes fitfully on the hard church floor, not like your soft bed back home with its clean sheets and absence of epidemic disease. Around you, others toss and turn, cough and whisper. A child cries out from a nightmare. An old man prays continuously under his breath. Latin phrases a shield against invisible terrors. You wake at dawn to a nun gently shaking your shoulder. "Wake up," she urges. "The health inspectors are coming. They need to clear the church." Half asleep, you gather your few possessions, joining the shuffle of displaced people returning to streets that offer no sanctuary. Outside, 5 Points is transformed yet again, this time by fear rather than celebration. A bell tolls in the distance, not for services, but marking another death. Then another bell joins in, and another. The epidemic has grown overnight, the toll rising with the sun. "We should check on Paddy," Mary says, though her tone suggests she expects the worst. The walk to Mulberry Bend feels longer today, each step weighted with dread. The streets are even emptier than yesterday, those who can stay inside doing so. Those who can't, who must work or starve, move quickly, avoiding contact. Paddy's building stands as before, but something's changed. No faces at windows, no sounds of life, and on the door, a newly painted red X, the mark of quarantine. "No," Mary whispers, her face draining of colour. "No, no, no." A police officer blocks your approach. "Building's under quarantine," he states flatly. "No one in or out." "But our friend's in there," Mary protests. "Paddy Mulligan, 3rd floor." The officer's face softens slightly. "Mulligan? They took him to Bellevue Hospital last night. Bad case." "He's alive?" Hope creeps into Mary's voice. "Was when they loaded him. That's all I know." It's something, a sliver of possibility in an otherwise hopeless situation. Bellevue, New York's oldest public hospital, offers little better than the tenements in terms of medical care, but at least Paddy isn't alone in his room, waiting for death. "What about the others?" you ask, gesturing towards the building. The officer's face closes again, either at the hospital or the morgue. Building's empty now, they're fumigating it today. The casual brutality of epidemic management in 1850s New York: empty the infected buildings, send the sick to overwhelmed hospitals, bury the dead in mass graves, and fumigate with chemicals that do nothing against bacteria they don't know exists. Then reopen the buildings and start the cycle again with the next wave of desperate tenants. "We should go uptown again," Mary says as you walk away. "Work while we can. Cholera waits for no one." The grim joke falls flat, but you understand her need to keep moving, keep working. In 5 Points, stopping means dying, whether from disease or starvation or violence. There is no rest, no recovery time, no moment to process the continuous trauma. You spend the day as before, picking through trash heaps for salvageable rags, now with the added fear of contamination. Every cough nearby makes you flinch. Every pale face suggests incipient disease. The coins you receive in payment might carry death on their surfaces. "My sister survived the 32 outbreak," Mary offers as you work. "Said half her building died, including our parents. She was sick too, but pulled through somehow. Said she was never the same after, weaker, tired all the time." These small personal histories emerge throughout the day. Everyone in 5 Points has a cholera story, a typhus story, a tuberculosis story. Disease is not an interruption to normal life. It's a recurring feature, as predictable as winter cold or summer heat. By evening, rumours spread of declining new cases, though whether true or wishful thinking is impossible to tell. The death carts seem less numerous, but that could mean the dead are simply waiting longer for collection. You and Mary find space in a different church basement, this one even more crowded than last night's. People sleep sitting up against walls, children curled in parents' laps. The air is thick with body odour, fear, and the sweet sour smell of illness. "Tomorrow we try the hospital," Mary decides, speaking softly in the darkness. "See about Paddy." You nod, though the prospect of entering Bellevue during an epidemic seems almost suicidal. But what choice is there? Paddy is friend, ally, connection, all crucial currencies in 5 Points survival. If he's still alive, she adds, we bring him food. Hospital food'll kill him faster than cholera. The dark humour of 5 Points, finding jokes in situations that should allow for none. It's not callousness so much as a coping mechanism, a way to face the unendurable and keep going anyway. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, you reflect on how quickly the neighbourhood's fragile equilibrium shattered in the face of disease. Yesterday's vibrant community, with its dances and drinks and bare-knuckle fights, has retreated behind closed doors. The precarious social fabric that makes life bearable in America's worst slum stretches thinner with each death. And yet, somehow, 5 Points endures. It always has. Through every epidemic, every fire, every wave of violence, the neighbourhood absorbs the punishment and continues, battered but unbroken. The people adapt, survive, rebuild their community bonds when the immediate crisis passes. Tomorrow will bring more challenges, finding Paddy, securing safe lodging, continuing to work despite the risks. But for now, in this crowded church basement full of similarly displaced souls, there is at least the comfort of not facing the epidemic alone. Outside, 5 Points holds its breath, waiting for cholera's deadly visit to end. The only certainty is that something else will follow, typhus perhaps, or tuberculosis, or a winter of starvation. The neighbourhood's history is written in such disasters, punctuating the daily struggle for survival. But tonight, you are alive. In 5 Points, that's victory enough. Dawn breaks over 5 Points with a surprising gift. Rain, not the violent summer storms that flood the low-lying streets and overflow the already taxed sewers, but a gentle, persistent shower that washes some of the filth from the cobblestones. The air smells different, almost clean for the first time since you arrived in this historical nightmare. Rain's good, Mary observes, standing under the church doorway. Clears the miasmas, might help with the cholera. Her folk understanding isn't entirely wrong. The rain will at least temporarily clean the streets, washing away some of the contamination that spreads disease. It's not enough, not nearly enough, but in 5 Points you take whatever small mercies come your way. The church has provided a meagre breakfast, watery porridge and stale bread, but it's more than many will eat today. You take your portion gratefully, noticing how the other displaced residents do the same. No complaints, no demands for better, just quiet gratitude for anything at all. Bellevue first, Mary decides, finishing her porridge. Then work, if there's time. The hospital sits on the East River, a considerable walk from 5 Points. The rain continues as you make your way through streets that grow marginally better with each block away from the slum. By the time you reach Bellevue, you're soaked but cleaner than you've been in days. Bellevue Hospital in the 1850s bears little resemblance to the modern medical centre it will become. The imposing stone building looks more like a prison than a place of healing, its grim architecture promising little comfort to those inside. Never been in a hospital before, Mary admits, hesitating at the entrance, never could afford it. For most 5 Points residents, hospitals are places to die, not recover. Home remedies, folk medicine, and simply enduring illness are the usual approaches. Only the desperately ill or those with no home at all end up in institutions like Bellevue. Inside, the hospital is chaos incarnate. Patients line the hallways on makeshift pallets, many clearly suffering from cholera's brutal symptoms. Harried nurses move between them, offering water and little else. The smell hits you like a physical force: bodily fluids, disinfectant, and the distinctive sweet-sour odour of disease. "We're looking for Paddy Mulligan," Mary tells an exhausted-looking attendant, brought in yesterday from Mulberry Bend. The man barely glances up from his ledger. Ward C, if he's still alive. The casual cruelty of the statement makes Mary flinch, but she pushes forward, navigating through corridors filled with the suffering and dying. 5 Points residents all around you, removed from their familiar squalors only to die in institutional squalor instead. Ward C is a long room with beds lining both walls, most occupied by men in various stages of cholera. The smell is even worse here. The sounds a symphony of human suffering, moaning, retching, praying, crying, and there, halfway down on the left, a familiar face. Paddy. Terribly changed, but still breathing. His robust frame seems to have collapsed in on itself, cheeks sunken, eyes hollowed out by dehydration. His skin has the bluish tinge characteristic of severe cholera. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, Mary whispers, crossing herself before approaching his bedside. Paddy, it's Mary O'Sullivan. His eyes flutter open, struggling to focus. Recognition dawns slowly, then the ghost of his usual grin. Mary, he croaks, voice barely audible. Come to see me off, have you? Don't talk foolishness, she scolds, though her voice breaks. You'll be dancing at Paradise Square again by Sunday. Even in his dire state, Paddy manages a weak laugh that dissolves into coughing. Aye, and I'll be crowned King of England too. He's dying. You can see it, Mary can see it, and most certainly Paddy knows it. But the fiction of recovery is a kindness all three of you maintain. Brought you something, Mary says, producing a small flask from inside her bodice. Finnegan's Best, for medicinal purposes. Paddy's eyes light up. Nurse, he calls weakly to a passing woman in a dirty apron. Help me take my medicine? The nurse, clearly overworked and numb to suffering, helps Paddy take a swig from the flask without question or comment. In a hospital overwhelmed by epidemic, small comforts like whiskey are the least of anyone's concerns. Smooth, Paddy sighs as the liquor burns down his throat. Better than the slop they serve here. What are they giving you? Mary asks, looking around for any sign of medical treatment. Water with salt, something to make me shit more, like I needed help with that, he grimaces. Doctor came by once, said I was a textbook case, whatever that means. The treatment sounds barbaric to modern ears, but it's actually not far off from current cholera protocols, replacing fluids and electrolytes. The problem is that 1850s medicine doesn't understand dosages or sterile technique, making their treatments as likely to kill as cure. The sisters come by. Paddy continues, his voice growing weaker. Pray over us. Offer last rites when it's time. Last rites, extreme unction, the final sacrament for the dying. Mary crosses herself again, muttering what sounds like a protective prayer. Not for me yet, Paddy insists with a flash of his old spirit. Devil's not ready for Paddy Mulligan, too much competition. You can't help but admire his determination to joke in the face of death. This gallows humour runs through 5 Points like a backbone, stiffening resolve when everything else fails. Anyone been to see you? Mary asks, adjusting his sweat-soaked pillow. Sullivan Brothers came yesterday, brought cards, played a few hands. His cracked lips twist in a smile. I won 3 cents. Think they let me? The simple kindness of this gesture, men taking time from their own struggles to visit a sick friend, deliberately losing at cards to give him a final victory, catches in your throat. 5 Points may be America's most notorious slum, but its residents still find ways to honour their humanity. And Kate, Mary asks carefully. Paddy's face clouds. Hasn't come, probably doesn't know. A pause. If I don't make it, tell her I asked for her. It's clear from Mary's expression that there is no Kate, at least not anymore. Another 5 points reality. Relationships as fragile as everything else, broken by disease, distance, or desperation. I'll tell her, Mary promises, the lie an act of mercy. A commotion erupts at the far end of the ward. A patient convulsing in the final stages of cholera, nurses rushing to hold him down. Paddy watches with the detached interest of someone who might soon share the same fate. "You should go," he says, turning back to Mary. "Not safe here, and I'm tired." "We'll come tomorrow," Mary promises, though all three of you know it's likely a promise she won't need to keep. Paddy fumbles for her hand, gripping it with surprising strength. "You're a good girl, Mary O'Sullivan. Too good for the points." "And you're a terrible liar, Paddy Mulligan," she responds, but leans down to kiss his forehead all the same. Outside the hospital, Mary walks in silence for several blocks, rain mingling with tears she won't acknowledge. Finally, she stops, taking a deep breath. "He'll not last the night," she says flatly. "I've seen enough cholera to know." "I'm sorry," you offer inadequately. "Sorry don't help," she replies, echoing her earlier sentiment. Then, more softly, "But thank you all the same." This is grief in 5 points, abbreviated, pragmatic, without the luxury of extended mourning. There are too many losses, too close together, and survival demands attention to the living rather than the dead. No rag-picking today, Mary decides, looking up at the still falling rain. Stuff'll be too wet to be worth anything. Let's try the mission instead. Might be extra work with so many sick. The 5 Points mission occupies a former brewery at the heart of the neighbourhood, its conversion from alcohol production to religious salvation a metaphor too obvious to ignore. Despite Mary's general scepticism toward do-gooders, the mission provides essential services, food, occasional shelter, and sometimes paid work for neighbourhood women. Mrs. O'Sullivan greets the mission superintendent, a stern-faced woman with surprisingly kind eyes. "We wondered if you'd come today. We're short-handed with the epidemic." "Ready to work, ma'am," Mary responds, slipping easily into the deference expected by charity providers. "My cousin, too." The superintendent eyes you dubiously, but nods. "Laundry needs doing. 3 cents an hour, paid at day's end." It's less than rag-picking on a good day, but guaranteed money regardless of weather. You follow Mary to the mission's washroom, a steam-filled chamber dominated by massive tubs and washboards. "Ladies," Mary nods to the half-dozen women already at work, their hands red and raw from lye soap and hot water. They nod back, a few offering tired smiles. The work is punishing, hauling heavy wet linens, scrubbing stubborn stains, wringing water from sheets that feel like they weigh a ton. The lye burns your skin, the steam makes breathing difficult, and your back screams with each movement. And yet there's something almost comforting about the communal labour, the rhythm of work shared among women who understand each other's struggles. "My Giovanni has the fever," confides an Italian woman working beside you, her English heavily accented but clear. "3 days now. I pray to Santa Maria while I scrub. 1 prayer each scrub. My Aoife had it last year," offers an Irish woman across the tub. "We gave her mustard water and prayed to St. Roch. She lived." "St. Roch?" asks the Italian woman. "Patron saint of plague victims," explains the Irish woman. "Very powerful against fever." The exchange of folk remedies and protective saints continues as you work, practical advice mingled with spiritual comfort passed between women of different backgrounds united by common threats. Each has a story of survival or loss, a remedy tried, a prayer offered. "My mother said onions in the sick room draw out the poison," offers a German woman, wringing a sheet with practiced efficiency. "Put one under the bed, it turns black when it absorbs the disease." "Hot mustard plaster on the belly," counters a black woman, her arms muscled from years of similar labour, draws out the cold that causes the purging. None of these remedies would impress modern medicine, but they represent something vital, agency in the face of overwhelming powerlessness. When doctors are scarce or ineffective, when hospitals are feared death houses, these traditional practices provide both practical action and psychological comfort. "My neighbour lost 3 children in 3 days, says a quiet voice, stopping the conversation cold. Nothing helped, nothing. The shared reality of 5 points reasserts itself. Sometimes nothing works. Sometimes everyone dies. Sometimes all the prayers and poultices and protective rituals in the world can't save those you love. The women work in silence for a while, each lost in private thoughts or memories. Then someone begins to hum softly, an Irish lament you don't recognise. Another voice joins, then another, different melodies from different traditions, somehow weaving together into something new and strangely beautiful. This too is 5 points, cultural hybridization born of proximity and shared hardship. In the crowded tenements and workshops, traditions blend and transform, creating something uniquely American from the fragments of old-world heritage. By midday, your hands are blistered and your back feels permanently bent, but the pile of clean laundry has grown impressively. The mission superintendent appears, looking pleased. "Good work, ladies. Dinner is served in the hall for workers." The simple meal, bean soup and brown bread, tastes like a feast after hours of hard labour. You eat at long tables alongside mission workers, other charity cases, and a few neighbourhood residents seeking temporary refuge from the epidemic. "That's Reverend Pease," Mary whispers, nodding toward a distinguished-looking man moving between tables. "Runs the mission. Better than most of his kind. Actually lives here in the points instead of just visiting to feel good about himself." The Reverend stops at your table, smiling warmly. "Mrs. O'Sullivan, good to see you. How goes the laundry?" "Nearly done, sir," Mary responds with unusual respect. "Sheets for the hospital?" "Yes, Bellevue needs all we can provide." His face clouds. "The epidemic is particularly virulent this time." "My friend's there," Mary says. "Paddy Mulligan. Don't suppose—" "I'll visit this evening," Reverend Pease promises immediately. "Offer what comfort I can." The simple kindness brings tears to Mary's eyes, quickly blinked away. "Thank you, sir." After the Reverend moves on, Mary explains, "He buried my sister's child last winter. Did it proper, with a real service and all, even though we couldn't pay. Said every soul deserves dignity, even the poorest." In a neighbourhood where death often comes without ceremony, bodies simply collected and disposed of in mass graves, this insistence on individual dignity is revolutionary. Whatever else the mission does or fails to do, this recognition of 5 Points residents' full humanity earns Mary's respect. The afternoon brings a new task, sorting donated clothing for distribution to the needy. The irony isn't lost on you. Yesterday you were picking rags from trash heaps, today you're helping distribute charity to people exactly like yourself. "Take anything you need," whispers an older mission worker when the superintendent isn't looking. "God knows you've earned it." Mary selects a relatively intact shawl to replace her tattered one. You find a pair of socks without holes, a luxury in 5 Points. Small improvements, but meaningful ones. As you work, more neighbourhood residents drift into the mission, some seeking food, others shelter. Still others simply human connection during frightening times. The main hall becomes a de facto community centre, people sharing news and comfort away from the tenements where disease lurks. Heard the health department's closing more buildings on Mulberry, reports a dock worker, his powerful frame diminished by obvious exhaustion. Where's everyone supposed to go? Streets? The old brewery's taking extra bodies, offers another man. 3 cents a spot, no questions. The old brewery, once an actual brewery, now the most notorious tenement in 5 Points, already dangerously overcrowded under normal conditions. During epidemics it becomes something from Dante's imagination, humans packed so tightly they sleep in shifts, sharing the same fetid air, the same disease-ridden spaces. "Rather sleep in the street," mutters Mary. "At least there's air." "Rain's stopping," someone notes, looking toward the windows. "Good sign, maybe." The mission gradually empties as evening approaches, residents returning to whatever accommodations they've secured for the night. You and Mary collect your earnings, 36 cents each for 12 hours work, and face the same dilemma as yesterday. "Church again, you suggest?" Mary shakes her head. "Too crowded now. Everyone's got the same idea." She leads you instead to a small, nondescript building a few blocks from the mission. A hand-painted sign identifies it as Mrs. Chen's boarding house. "Chinese lady," Mary explains, "runs a clean place, costs more, but worth it if you've got the coin." The boarding house is indeed cleaner than anywhere else you've seen in 5 Points. The narrow entrance hall smells of unfamiliar spices rather than sewage and rot. A tiny, elderly Chinese woman appears from a back room, her face deeply lined but her eyes alert. "Mrs. O'Sullivan!" she greets Mary in accented but clear English. "You need room?" "For 2, if you've got it, Mrs. Chen." The old woman studies you both, then nods. 50 cents. Clean bed, no drunks, no fighting. It's expensive by 5 Point standards, nearly a day's wages for a night's lodging, but Mary pays without hesitation. "Cheaper than a funeral," she mutters as she counts out the coins. Mrs. Chen leads you upstairs to a small room with 2 narrow beds. Actual beds, with frames and thin mattresses, not just floor space. The luxury is almost shocking after your previous accommodations. "Clean sheets," Mrs. Chen says proudly. "Wash hands before sleeping." She points to a basin of water in the corner. "No visitors, no noise after 9. When she leaves, Mary sighs deeply, sinking onto one of the beds. Worth every penny, she decides, especially during cholera time. She keeps it clean. The boarding house represents another aspect of 5 Points, entrepreneurship born of necessity. Mrs. Chen has carved out a niche, providing a service slightly better than the neighbourhood standard, charging more but delivering genuine value. In the process, she's created a safe haven not just for herself but for others willing and able to pay for temporary escape from the worst conditions. As darkness falls outside, 5 Points transforms yet again. From your second-floor window, you can see the streets becoming both emptier and more dangerous, those with homes retreating to them while predators emerge to claim the night. Mrs. Chen's husband was a sailor, Mary says, removing her shoes with a sigh of relief. Brought her back from China 30 years ago. When he died, she could have gone to work in a laundry or worse. Instead, she sold his things, bought this building, and made her own way. 5 Points respects that. Even the gangs leave her alone. The rare success story stands out against the neighbourhood's overwhelming misery. Not everyone can be Mrs. Chen. Luck, timing, and individual circumstances play enormous roles in who survives and thrives in 5 Points, but her existence offers something precious. Possibility. A church bell tolls in the distance, marking the hour. The sound carries other echoes, funeral bells that have rung too frequently during the epidemic, marking time in a place where life is often cut cruelly short. Should we check on Paddy tomorrow? You ask, though you suspect the answer. Mary's face tightens. If there's need, Reverend Pease will go tonight. He'll send word if... She doesn't finish the sentence. The unspoken hangs between you, the likelihood that Paddy won't survive the night, that tomorrow will bring news of his death rather than hopes for recovery. It's the expected outcome in 5 points, where illness too often means mortality. I keep thinking about what Paddy said yesterday, Mary muses, staring at the ceiling, about Kate. There never was a Kate, not really. He made her up years ago, this sweetheart waiting for him back in Cork. Helps him keep going, I think. The idea that someone's waiting, someone cares. The poignant fiction, a dying man's request to tell his imaginary lover that he asked for her, catches at your heart. What does it say about 5 points that even its illusions are shaped by loneliness, by the hunger for connection in a place where relationships are as precarious as everything else? People need stories, Mary continues, need something beyond just surviving another day. Paddy has his Kate, Mrs. Chen has her clean rooms, the mission folk have their God. Me, I've got Ireland, not the real one, mind, the one I remember from before the hunger. Green hills, and enough potatoes, and my ma singing while she worked. What happens when the stories aren't enough, you ask? Mary's laugh is soft, without humour. Drink, opium, fighting, dying. You've seen it all around you. The coping mechanisms of 5 points, healthy and unhealthy alike, stories and songs, alcohol and drugs, community and violence, whatever gets you through another day in America's most notorious slum. Outside, rain begins again, tapping gently against the window. The sound is almost soothing, a natural rhythm against the human chaos of 5 points. You lie on your bed, a real bed, not a floor space, and listen to Mary's breathing gradually slow as she drifts towards sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, work, food, the likely news of Paddy's death. The epidemic may worsen or begin to recede. The neighbourhood will continue its perpetual struggle for survival, its residents finding ways to endure conditions that should be unbearable. But tonight, in this clean room with its narrow but comfortable bed, you've found a moment of respite in the storm. Like the residents of 5 points, you've learned to appreciate small mercies, clean sheets, a roof that doesn't leak, walls that provide actual privacy. Your world back home, with its endless comforts and conveniences, seems impossibly distant. 5 points has changed your perspective, shown you how thin the veneer of civilization really is, how quickly humans can adapt to conditions that should break them. As sleep approaches, Mary murmurs something in Irish, a prayer perhaps, or just a fragment of those remembered green hills. Even in the depths of 5 points, dreams survive. Perhaps that, more than anything, explains how its residents endure. Morning comes with a gentle knock at the door. Mrs. Chen stands there, her lined face sombre. "Message for Mrs. O'Sullivan," she says, handing Mary a folded note. "From Mission." Mary opens it with fingers that tremble slightly, reads the few lines, then closes her eyes. She doesn't need to say anything. Paddy Mulligan, survivor of dockyard brawls and police beatings, veteran of 1,000 5 points hardships, has lost his final battle with cholera. "The funeral's this afternoon," she says quietly. "Reverend Pease arranged it. A proper burial, not the potter's field." This is a significant kindness in 5 Points, where most cholera victims end up in mass graves on Hart Island, unmarked and unmourned. A proper burial with a marked grave is a luxury few can afford. He had no family here, but he was liked, Mary explains as you both dress for the day. The mission sometimes does this, buries those who'd otherwise go unclaimed, gives us a chance to say goodbye proper. The funeral is held in the small cemetery behind the mission church, a patch of ground that somehow remains consecrated despite the surrounding squalor. A dozen or so people gather, dock workers who knew Paddy, women from the laundry, Reverend Pease in his clerical collar, and you and Mary. The service is brief but dignified. Paddy's plain pine coffin sits beside a freshly dug grave as Reverend Pease speaks words of comfort that sound almost believable, even in 5 Points. Paddy Mulligan was known to many of us as a friend, a hard worker, a man of good humour even in difficult times, the Reverend says. Though his life was not easy, he faced each day with courage and kindness. May he find in death the peace that often eluded him in life. The simple eulogy feels more genuine than flowery sentiments would have. 5 Points doesn't allow for illusions about the hardships of life or the frequency of death. What it does allow for, sometimes, is recognition of the humanity that persists despite everything. After the service, a few of the dock workers approach Mary. "We took up a collection," one says gruffly, handing her a small cloth bag that clinks with coins. "For Paddy's stone. Ain't right for him to go without a marker." Mary's eyes fill with tears that for once she doesn't try to hide. "He'd have done the same for any of you," she says simply. This is 5 Points at its most revealing, a community cobbled together from desperation and necessity, yet capable of profound generosity. From the little they have, the men who collected pennies for Paddy's gravestone will go without meals to make it happen, but they do it anyway. Some bonds transcend even the brutal mathematics of survival. As the small group disperses, Reverend Pease approaches you and Mary. "The epidemic seems to be waning," he offers. "Fewer new cases reported yesterday. Thank God for small mercies," Mary responds, genuine relief in her voice. "Indeed," the Reverend hesitates. "Mrs. O'Sullivan, the mission has a proposition for you. We've lost several of our regular laundry workers to the sickness. We could use someone experienced, someone who knows the neighbourhood. Full-time work, room and board included." The offer clearly stuns Mary. Regular employment is rare enough in 5 Points. Jobs that include housing are almost unheard of. For a single woman with no family, it's a lifeline thrown in a drowning sea. I don't know what to say," she stammers. "Say yes," the Reverend smiles. "You've earned it with your hard work, and frankly, we need help from those who understand 5 Points from the inside, not just well-meaning outsiders like myself." "Then yes," Mary decides, squeezing your hand in excitement. "Yes, I accept." As you walk back from the cemetery, Mary seems transformed, not just by grief for Paddy, but by the unexpected opportunity. For perhaps the first time since you met her, she looks toward the future with something resembling hope. "It's not much," she acknowledges. "Laundry work is hard, and the mission folk can be stiff-necked about their rules, but a real bed every night, regular meals, maybe even put aside a few pennies for something better someday. In 5 Points, such modest ambitions represent wild optimism." Most residents can't see beyond the next meal, the next night's lodging. Planning for someday is a luxury afforded to those with at least minimal security. "What about you?" she asks suddenly. "Will you stay in the Points?" The question catches you off guard. In the intensity of experiencing 5 Points, you've almost forgotten your status as a temporary visitor to this historical nightmare. Unlike Mary, you have an escape route, back to your own time, your own comfortable life with its clean water and antibiotics and absence of cholera. I don't think I'll be here much longer, you answer truthfully. She nods, unsurprised. Not many stay who have a choice. Can't blame them. The afternoon slides toward evening, 5 Points gradually shifting from its daytime rhythms to the more dangerous nocturnal ones. With the epidemic receding, more people venture onto the streets, but there's still a wariness, an awareness that death has passed through and might return. One last night before I move to the mission, Mary says. Let's get something decent to eat. Decent, in 5 Points, is relative, but Mary leads you to a small cellar restaurant run by an Italian family where the smell of garlic and tomatoes replaces the usual neighbourhood stenches. For a few pennies, you get bowls of pasta with a thin but flavourful sauce, a feast by local standards. Never had Italian food before coming to the Points, Mary admits, twirling pasta awkwardly on her fork. In Ireland, it was potatoes every day until there weren't any left. Here, at least there's variety in what little we get. The small restaurant fills as evening deepens, mostly with Italian families speaking their native language. Children dart between tables while parents talk animatedly, hands waving for emphasis. Despite the poverty evident in their clothes and thin frames, there's genuine warmth and community here. That's how we survive the Points, Mary observes, watching a grandmother dote on a small child. Find your people, make family where you can. Hold on to whatever came with you from the old country while learning to live in the new one. As you finish eating, the restaurant's mood shifts. Men come in from work, tired but relieved to be home. A bottle of homemade wine appears. Someone produces a battered accordion, and music fills the small space. Mournful Italian melodies that speak of homelands left behind and new lives built from nothing. We should go, Mary says reluctantly as full darkness falls outside. Not safe in the streets late. Night in 5 Points brings dangers absent during daylight. Certain alleys become impassable, controlled by gangs or criminals. Windows that showed warm light earlier now reveal shadowy figures moving inside brothels and gambling dens. The relatively innocent commerce of the day gives way to 5 Points' nocturnal economy, vice in all its varieties. Mary leads you quickly through streets that grow more threatening with each passing minute. Men linger in doorways, watching with predatory eyes. Women call from windows, offering companionship for a price. From a basement dive comes the sound of fighting. Shouts, breaking glass, a cry of pain. "Don't look," Mary advises as you pass a particularly dark alley where shapes move in the shadows. 5 Points at night isn't for the likes of us. The question of who it is for hangs unspoken. Those with nowhere else to go, those whose business thrives in darkness, those whose desperation drives them to risk the night streets for what little profit they offer. Almost there, Mary murmurs as you turn onto a slightly better lit street. Mrs. Chen's place is just ahead. A figure lurches from a doorway, a man clearly drunk, his face hidden in shadow. "Well now, what's this?" he slurs, blocking your path. "Two ladies out past decent hours." Mary stiffens beside you, her hand sliding into her pocket where you know she keeps a small knife. "Step aside, mister. We're just heading home." "Home?" The man laughs, revealing missing teeth. "In the Points? Ain't no homes here, just holes where rats sleep." "I said move," Mary repeats, her voice harder now. "We don't want trouble." The tension stretches between you, Mary's determination against the man's drunken unpredictability, 5 points at night where wrong turns and bad luck can end in tragedy. Then, from behind you, "Everything all right, Mrs. O'Sullivan?" The newcomer's voice is calm, but carries unmistakable authority. The drunk looks past you, sees something that makes him reconsider, and melts back into the shadows without another word. You turn to find a tall black man in simple but neat clothes, his expression friendly but watchful. "Mr. Johnson," Mary sighs with relief. "Thank you kindly." "My pleasure, ma'am." He tips his hat. "Heading to Mrs. Chen's? I'll walk with you the rest of the way." As you continue, Mary explains in a whisper, "Isaiah Johnson, deacon at the Coloured Church on Leonard Street. Good man, looks out for folks around here when he can. Another 5 points survival strategy. Unlikely alliances, help appearing from unexpected quarters. The neighbourhood's dangers create strange partnerships, mutual protection across lines that might otherwise divide." Mrs. Chen's boarding house appears ahead, its windows still lit, offering sanctuary from the increasingly menacing night. Mr. Johnson sees you safely to the door, tips his hat again, and continues on his own way into the darkness. 5 points takes care of its own, Mary says as you climb the stairs to your room. Not always, not everyone, but enough to keep us going. The room feels even more luxurious after witnessing the dangers outside. Clean sheets, solid walls, a door that locks. Mary secures the bolt with practiced care, her body finally relaxing once the outside world is firmly shut away. "Last night here," she muses, sitting on her bed. "Tomorrow I go to the mission, and you, wherever you're going." "I'll miss you," you say, surprised to find it's absolutely true. In this brief historical immersion, Mary has become more than a guide. She's become a friend, an anchor in the bewildering world of 5 points. "Ah, you'll be fine," she smiles, but her eyes betray similar attachment. 5 points puts hair on your chest, as Paddy would say. The mention of Paddy brings a moment of shared sadness, but not the raw grief of earlier. In 5 points, even mourning must be efficient, pragmatic. The living require too much attention to spend long on the dead. As night deepens outside, the sounds of 5 points filter through the thin walls. Distant shouts, occasional laughter, the clatter of wheels on cobblestones. But inside this small room, there's peace of a sort, a momentary reprieve from the neighbourhood's relentless demands. "You know what I think about sometimes," Mary says softly, staring at the ceiling. "What it must be like in those big houses uptown. Clean water just by turning a tap. Rooms with only one family in them. Children who go to school instead of factories. The simple luxuries that define middle-class life in 1850s New York. Amenities that even the poorest in your time would take for granted. The gap between 5 points and the comfortable world just a mile or two uptown might as well be an ocean. But then I think," she continues, "those uptown folk, they don't know what we know. They don't understand how to survive when everything's against you. They've never felt what it's like when a stranger shares their last crust because you're both Irish or both Italian or both just hungry. They don't know 5 points." There's pride in her voice alongside the resentment, pride in endurance, in the hard-won knowledge of survival against impossible odds. 5 points residents may envy the wealthy their comforts, but they also recognise their own strength, forged in conditions that would break those same privileged New Yorkers. "Try to sleep," Mary suggests, blowing out the candle beside her bed. "Tomorrow comes early, same as always." Darkness enfolds the room, deeper and more complete than you've experienced since arriving in 5 points. No street lamps penetrate the small window. No neighbours' candles cast shadows on the walls. For once, you can almost forget where you are, almost imagine yourself back in your own bed, in your own time. Outside, Five Points continues its nocturnal existence. The gambling dens and brothels will operate until dawn. The gangs will claim their territories until daylight drives them to cover. The most desperate will seek shelter in doorways and alleys until morning allows more dignified accommodations. But inside this small room with its clean sheets and solid door, sleep approaches like a merciful visitor. Your body, aching from unaccustomed labor and stress, gradually relaxes. Your mind, overwhelmed by the constant sensory assault of 5 Points, begins to quiet. Mary's breathing deepens beside you, becoming the rhythmic pattern of sleep. Despite everything, the poverty, the disease, the constant struggle, she's found enough peace to rest. It's perhaps the most remarkable 5 Points survival skill of all, the ability to find moments of tranquility in a place designed to destroy it. As you drift towards sleep yourself, you reflect on what you've witnessed in this historical nightmare. The 5 Points slum was real, its conditions as horrific as any description could capture. People lived and died in circumstances that modern Americans would consider unsurvivable. They endured disease, starvation, violence, and exploitation that would break most spirits. And yet, they survived. Not all of them. Paddy didn't, and countless others succumbed to 5 Points' many hazards, but enough persisted to build communities, to create culture, to pass on their resilience to children who would eventually leave the slum for better circumstances. 5 Points was America at its worst, but also, paradoxically, America at its most determined. Immigrants and outcasts who refused to disappear despite every force aligned against them. Your own bed back home awaits your return, clean, comfortable, free of bedbugs and cholera and the constant precarity of 1850s slum life. You'll never again turn a tap without remembering the 5 Points water pump, never throw away food without thinking of those who scavenged for meals, never take modern medicine for granted after seeing what cholera did to Paddy. The lessons of 5 Points settle over you like a blanket, not comfortable but necessary. This was part of America's story, a chapter often glossed over in favor of more triumphant narratives. But understanding 5 Points means understanding something essential about the foundation upon which modern America was built, the exploitation, the suffering, but also the incredible human capacity for adaptation and persistence. Mary murmurs something in her sleep, a word, a name, perhaps a fragment of prayer. Even unconscious, she carries 5 Points with her, its rhythms and demands never fully absent, but for now she rests, her body gathering strength for tomorrow's challenges. And you too find yourself sliding deeper towards sleep, the hardships of 5 Points gradually fading as consciousness recedes. Your breathing slows, matching Mary's restful rhythm. Your thoughts grow less distinct, more dreamlike. The weight of historical witness lifts replaced by the lightness that comes before true sleep. In your time, 5 Points no longer exists. Demolished, rebuilt, reimagined as Chinatown, as courthouses, as modern apartment buildings with proper plumbing and ventilation. The people who suffered and survived there are long gone, their stories mostly forgotten except by historians and descendants who may never know the full truth of what their ancestors endured. But for these few moments you've walked their streets, breathed their air, witnessed their struggles and small victories. You've seen 5 Points not as a historical abstraction, but as a living community of people who, despite everything, maintained their humanity in conditions designed to strip it away. As sleep finally claims you, 5 Points recedes like an ebbing tide, its lessons absorbed but its hardships thankfully left behind. Unlike Mary, unlike Paddy, unlike the thousands who had no choice but to wake tomorrow in America's most notorious slum, you can return to comfort, to safety, to the countless luxuries that would seem miraculous to 5 Points residents. Your last conscious thought is gratitude for modern medicine, for clean water, for regulations that prevent such slums from existing in America today, and perhaps also gratitude for this glimpse into a past that, however harsh, helped shape the present you'll return to. 5 Points fades completely now, replaced by the deep, healing peace of sleep. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes fully, and you drift into dreams far removed from tenements and cholera and struggling immigrants in a hostile new land. Sleep comes, as it eventually did even in 5 Points, offering temporary escape from hardship and renewal for tomorrow's challenges. But unlike those who slept in those crowded tenements, your sleep can be peaceful, secure in the knowledge that morning will bring comforts they could scarcely imagine. Rest now and carry their memory gently into your dreams.